Hello, everybody, and welcome to a video on the Constructor Criticism YouTube channel, and a bonus thing on the podcast, because I feel bad that I lost the podcast this week. You know what happens, Mason Clark, when you don't make sure your microphone works before an episode and record an entire 2-hour episode?
I'm going to take a guess that it might not work in the episode, and then you don't have the episode for the feed.
Yeah, you might spend a couple minutes editing the beginning and the ending of the show, making sure everything's set up, so you then go into the show and start clipping. Oh man, that's not what happened. You edit the beginning and the end, and then people miss out on an episode of Constructive Criticism where we talk about Pioneer and talk about Modern and talk about Standard. But we're here for Pioneer today because this is going to be a deck tech on Mono Green Ramp.
Tron, as some people have called it.
Nah, that's a stupid name. Stupid name.
It is a mono green ramp deck. I do like that people are frustrated and they've decided to port their Tron hate onto this deck. It's great. I get we're both Ugin decks, but yeah. So
yeah, Tron's a stupid name for it. Let's be honest. It's not the best. I don't know that I appreciate the hate, but you know what I do appreciate, Mason?
Arboreal Grazer.
Not as much as you, but I do like myself a good Nissa's Pilgrimage, a nice Cultivate, Kamigawa's Reach. You know,
Divination or Ancestral Recall, I think is what you meant to say.
Ooh, Ancestral Recall, Mason Clark calls Nissa's Pilgrimage. So, Mason, why don't we talk about the deck really quick? So we have 3 Walking Ballista, 4 Arboreal Grazer, 4 Elvish Rejuvenator, 2 Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, 2 Ulamog, Ceaseless Hunger, 4 Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, 4 Once Upon a Time, 1 Grow from Ashes, 4 Nissa's Pilgrimage, 4 Hour of Promise. We have 28 lands and 1 Blast Blown, 1 Cascading Cataracts, 4 Castle Garenbrig, 2 Desert of the Indomitable, 1 Field of Ruin, 2 Field of the Dead, 8 Forests, 2 Hotship Oasis, 1 Radiant Fountain, 2 Sanctum of Ugin, 1 Scavenger Grounds, 3 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. In the sideboard, we have 3 Jotty Offshoot, 3 Veil of Summer, 2 Return to Nature, 2 Karn Scion of Urza, 4 Thought-Not Seer, and 1 Worldbreaker.
That's right. So this is the mono green ramp deck that I've been testing for these Star City Games Invitational coming up. I got a 5-0 with it on Tuesday after the new BNR hit, and I tested the deck on Monday, hoping people would honor the cat ban, and I punted away a 5-0. And then since then, I've 4-1'd a bunch, and a bunch of the people on 5-0 with the deck, and it's kind of taken off. And I think it is the best big mana deck in Pioneer. If your goal is to go over the top of people, I think this is a much better and consistent way of doing it than Nexus of Fate. And yeah, really, this deck says, is the format soft to Ugin? If so, our deck is great. And the format's soft to Ugin right now. So
we should rewind, because okay. I would feel very terrible if we didn't give credit to the person that originated this deck in that PTQ top 8. Really quick, Mason, give us a shout out to
Raging Tilt Monster was the person who came up with the core of the deck and basically the idea of getting to Ugin. And they're actually the one, their Twitter account, I don't remember, I think it might actually just be at Raging Tilt Monster.
I think so.
Yeah, they tweeted basically saying what I just said, which is, do you think the format is soft to Ugin? If yes, you should play this deck. And now, when the cat ban happened, I was like, oh, people are probably going to play a lot more mid-rangey decks. Mid-range decks don't beat Ugin ever. And so I picked it up, changed a couple cards in the sideboard for the cat ban, and then added a green source to the main deck, and called it a day from there. And then kind of been working on it since then. And so...
yeah, this is a deck that I'm really excited about. I'm going to be playing this in the 1K this weekend. You're going to be playing it in the challenge this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So we're both pretty into this deck. This is a deck that I got to place with you a little bit on, and then I got to play some additionally last night. It's really consistent. I've always thought that Elvish Rejuvenator was one of the best ramp spells printed in a while, but didn't have its supporting cast. And I think Rejuvenator really... it does a lot in this deck to kind of help you be an Hour Promise deck.
Yeah, Hour Promise for maybe those who haven't played with that card before, because they didn't see a whole lot of standard play. It's 4 and a green. When you play it, you go grab 2 lands from your deck, and if you have 3 deserts in play, you get 2 zombies at the end. So, in theory, what you used to do is you would have a desert in play, then go grab 2 more. Now you've ramped to 7 and put 2 2/2s in play, and that kind of helps bridge you to it, right? So it doubles as both a bridge spell and a ramp spell, and also kind of making threats. But what happened now is is that we could still get that to trigger sometimes, but you can also go grab Field of the Dead something. And so you don't need to have as many deserts, and you start generating these extra zombies because now you have 7 lands. So it's kind of easy actually to start generating zombies when you have a Field of the Dead.
You pretty often have one or the other in any case.
Yeah, one of those two things is going to happen, and then in the later game, you just go grab 2 Field of the Dead, and you're like, all right, make 4 zombies. This is my plan now. So, yeah, Our Promise is a really, really powerful ramp spell. I used to love playing the Bant Sun deck, and so this kind of does the same thing. Instead of going to Sun, you're going to Ugin. And like you said, Elvish Rejuvenator is great. The deck really does a great job of going 1, 3, 5, 7 on its curve, which is kind of a weird curve, but thanks to Arboreal Grazer and to Pilgrimage or Rejuvenator, you're very easily at 5. And then at 5, you have both Golos and Our Promise and the one of Grove and Ashes kicked to get to 7. And then at that point, it really is just kind of what big threat do you play from there.
And getting to 7 in this deck, once again, is actually kind of important. You wouldn't think that maybe this format was kind of designed to happen, but even Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, right, starts to kick in around there.
Yeah, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, which is also a card that hasn't seen much play until now, is a land that says if you have 7 or more lands in play, it makes 2 colorless mana for colorless spells, and normally it's just like a waste, makes a colorless mana. So once you get to 7, if you grab those off your Hour Promises, you're actually like at 9 mana, right? So you just need 1 more to cast Ulamog, and if you have a Castle Garenbrig in play, you have 10.
Well, not only that, but also if you're just trying to cast Ugin, just any of your 5-mana ramp spells with that card also get you to Ugin.
That's very true, yeah. And so you're just right there, and boom. And like we said, the format's very soft to Ugin. The only deck that's really good against Ugin are a stack-based combo like Nexus or Insol Artifact, because you don't hit much.
Yeah, so. I think this deck is quite powerful. It's got the right things against aggro decks. I like one of the things that you did is you changed the number of Jauti offshoots to the board. This is something we actually talked about during the league that we were playing together, just where, do I really need 4 Grazer and 4 Jauti offshoot? That's just so much. And then also when you think about the fact that you up the number of Thought-Knot Seer against those aggro decks, that's going to help too.
Yeah, so we started Raging Tilt Monster at 2 Thought-Knot Seers, and then I upped it to a 3rd, and then after playing this week and the deck getting popular and Nexus getting popular, I upped it to the 4th Thought-Knot Seer. It's basically the concession for the Mirror and for Nexus. And yeah, once you have those kind of things, you can't have all these 1-drops that don't really impact enough and have these things and still hope to achieve a game plan, right? And so it was a thing where if maybe the plan was to side out Arboreal Grazers against aggro decks, we could have 4 Jautis, but if you're going to leave your Grazers in, then you can't have 8 mana, 1 mana O3s, right? They don't really do much after the first turn. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the other big changes, and something that we both thought of independently, it was really funny on our call last night, was Worldbreaker.
Yeah, Worldbreaker I think is a great sideboard tech. Not only does it give you game in the mirrors and give you a reach creature randomly, but it's also just a recursive threat for those really removal-heavy decks. Where the thing is we mentioned how we can get Field of the Dead going with Our Promise, but we only have 2 Field of the Dead, and we do have, we mentioned earlier in the lands, we have 8 forests, 4 Castle Garenbrig, 3 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. So sometimes it can take a little bit to get on and get going, and in the matchups post-board, they're normally shifting to be a little faster. So having a threat like Worldbreaker forces them to expend those resources. Normally we'll 2-for them a couple of times, and then it just keeps coming back and back and back. And
yeah, it's kind of trivial to have colorless mana in this deck.
Oh, yeah. I believe I did a count last night. The deck plays 13 colorless sources. So that's a very fair number, especially for your 7-drop that you're ramping into most likely. So it does nombo a bit with the Field of the Dead thing, like I talked about, but you're not a great Field of the Dead deck, and also with the point that you're normally looping this, it's not a huge problem. But also, it just randomly kills stuff. You can bring this into matchups where your opponent's going to have some weird cards, and it's a nice catch-all. Yeah. I've seen some people try and put it main deck. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's at least reasonable.
Yeah. One thing that I thought about looking at this list earlier, when you sent it to me, the first thing I thought is, can I play Spatial Contortion?
Yeah. Anderson Lee. Oh, good. I'm having a moment. I hope that's your name. I'm having a blank. The Tron player from Twitter, the very good one, has been talking to me a bit about this deck, and he has 3 Spatial Contortions where we have 3 Jauti offshoots. And so he's kind of taken that approach of I'm going to still try and Grazer on 1 and then do this. Because sometimes you do have awkward draws where you're okay, I want to play my Jauti and then my Grazer, but now if I draw a 3-mana ramp spell, it's awkward. So it can be a little bit of an ombo, and so he's trying to mitigate that, which I think is quite smart.
Yeah. That's a super interesting one. I think that this deck overall is something that if you are looking to get into the format at a pretty reasonable price online, it's under $300. And it is a little bit expensive in paper just because of the nature of it playing. Got a lot of expensive cards like Walking Ballista, Ulamog Ugin, a lot of mythics in it. So
Yeah, once upon a time too is like $11, something like that.
Yeah.
It's pricey. It doesn't look like it would be either.
Yeah, but it's under 600, which is like the price of a standard deck for the most expensive standard deck. So it's definitely a deck that if you are looking to get into it, the only thing that could get banned out of this deck is Once Upon a Time, and we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I heard some interesting talks that maybe the format shouldn't have Ugin in it. I don't know where I think on that.
Yeah, that seems stupid.
Yeah, so we'll kind of see, but I agree. Once Upon a Time could very easily go. I think it's actually pretty important to the deck, but I don't think it's so important that if they were to ban it on Monday, we couldn't play the deck anymore. I just think your consistency goes down a little bit on going 1-3-5.
Absolutely.
Which is probably fair, to be honest.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's kind of ridiculous how much we do that.
Yeah. Well, that is going to do it from me. Mason, do you have anything else you want to say on this deck? Anything you want to talk about the matchups? The format's so open, it's kind of hard to talk about matchups. We kind of talked about the type of cards that are in the sideboard for why they're in the sideboard. Outside of Karn and I think Veil of Summer, we didn't really mention those, but I think those kind of are self-explanatory.
Well, I will talk about Karn because I've gotten a surprising number of messages, and I think it's probably because maybe people didn't play with Karn outside of like mid-range G decks back in the day. When it was a legal card. And so I'll just mention that real quick. So Veil of Summer is very obvious, right? If you're playing it to like a Sultai or a black, green, or a blue deck, you want it to do the thing it does. Now Karn, its job is basically, honestly, just to take up and give you a random card. Because the trick to Karn sign version, in my opinion, is that when you put Karn in your deck, you want to make sure you're hitting land drops. So I bring Karn in matchups where I think my opponent's going to disrupt my ramp or disrupt my draw with Thoughtseize or counterspells. So a lot of times Veil of Summer and Karn come in together. And then when they're coming in, you're able to play it and have it be like, okay, even if you give me a land every turn, that's fine. I'm still making these land drops because I expect you to counter my spells.
Right.
And the turns where you hit double big spell, or you hit a spell that like you want to grab on the next turn, you're now forcing them to answer it, and it has so much loyalty, it buys you a lot of time. And in those matchups, if they decide to side up a bunch of removal, you can start ticking down your Karn if you kind of got things rolling. And then, 2/2/2s isn't a whole lot, but like it can still apply a good amount of pressure on planeswalkers like Jace French Prodigy example, like on the battlefield, so they can't just be taking them down for free. But yeah, it is surprisingly good. I've gotten a lot of feedback on like, is Karn necessary? And I think as long as the Sultai decks are getting played, I think Karn is necessary. And if you cut it, I think you gotta go up to the 4th Veil of Summer. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to play this deck. I already have thoughts on 2 changes that I'm going to make to this list going into the 1K this weekend, so I'm excited to try it out. Mason, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark, where I actually have a sideboard guide for this deck, so you can check that out. And you can find me at twitch.tv/TheMasonClark. I have, I believe, a VOD up right now of this deck on a league, and I might stream the challenge. I don't know. I kind of want to take it try-hardy. Maybe I'll record it and then put some matches up somewhere. We'll figure it out. But yeah, you can check me out in those 2 places.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody watching on YouTube. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to head on over to patreon.com/ccmtg to become a patron of this content. Thank you everybody so much, and we'll see you guys all next week with another Deck Tech on the Constructed Criticism YouTube channel.
Ice climbers for life, baby.
Don't forget to